the opening remarks.
Well, thank you all very much for coming out today to hear Representative Golan and myself speak. I consider this a privilege and an opportunity for you to get a chance to know me, and for that reason I'll just talk for a couple of minutes, and then we can engage in a conversation. This size of group, I think it's always most practical and most helpful for folks to get a chance to ask hard questions, and I'll give you honest answers, and then we can really have a conversation. I do want to spend just a couple of minutes introducing myself. By now, lots of folks have seen me on TV, my son's funny because people will recognize me now and they'll sort of turn and say, hey, that's that guy's on TV, and my son will always go, you know, you're just not a big deal. He's both right, and you always need someone like that to make sure you're grounded and thinking about the world precisely the right way. I've never run for office before. My background is that I grew up in Southern California and then went off to West Point, graduated from there in 1986. And then served on active duty for about 5.5 years, the first 3 in Germany, and then a couple years back here in the States at Fort Hood and in Fort Carson, and a little bit of time in Fort Knox as well. And then got out of the service in 1981, at least on active duty, 1981, and went to law school, practiced law for 3 years, and then had this really cool opportunity. I came to Kansas, back to Kansas, to start a company with 3 of my West Point buddies, guys who were classmates of mine and graduated in 1986. And we started a company that became Thayer Aerospace, made aircraft parts out on 119th Street West in K42. We grew the business over about a decade from scratch to, depending on what exactly the aircraft industry was doing, 400 or 500 folks out at that facility, that operation, other operations as well. In 2005, I left that business and now run a company called Century International. And we sell oilfield equipment. We sell to independent producers and drillers all across the world. It's truly a global business, and have been running that now for 5 years, I guess it is. So as you can see, I've never run for office before, but 18 months ago I watched as we had a very, very big shift in the way the government was thinking about its relationship to people. Under both Republicans and Democrats, the government has spent too much. But we, in the last 1.5 years, have left the reservation. We literally are now passing on a deeply immoral burden to my son, who's 20, and if we're blessed, we'll have grandchildren, to his kids, and we can't do that anymore. We are at a point in our nation's history where we no longer have the luxury of spending money we don't have. And I think we all, everyone in this room, needs to be intense and serious about putting that back in the right place. And that's not a purely partisan issue, but it is the case. Since this administration took office, we have created an enormous entitlement program in healthcare that no one knows how we're going to fund. And we've moved to a place with financial reform where our small community banks, who do so much wonderful charitable work, are trying to figure out whether their existence will remain. All in the name of solving a problem with really big banks. We've done enormous harm to community banks all around the 4th District of Kansas. And we are working on a set of regulations today where our agriculture community, 4th District Kansas is 10.5 counties, at least 8.5 of which are purely rural. We're going to put in place agriculture regulations that are going to really, really hurt our farmers and our livestock community. I think those are all wrong directions, and it's why I decided to run. I always think that the principle must be that the best decisions get made by people like you. People who really understand the communities they live in, and in some cases the communities they serve, and not take all of the resources to the federal government. I think that's backwards. Today we so often turn to the federal government to solve problems that are quintessentially local and can only, in most cases, be served by someone who really understands the true nature of the need. And that is so hard to do from someone who's in Washington, D.C. with having their strings pulled a million different directions and taking resources of our community and sending some fraction of those dollars back here. So that's the core message. I think we're all cognizant today that the biggest challenge we face in the short run is jobs and job creation and getting the economy growing again. I think those are deeply related. I think when the federal government takes so many resources out of the private sector and shifts them to the government sector, that you do enormous destruction to job creation and people's willingness to take risks. In January, everyone in this room will pay more in taxes. Almost certainty now. Congress will go back into session after the election, and perhaps they'll do something to change that. But if they don't, we will add a huge number of people in the 4th District of Kansas to the federal income tax rolls who paid no federal income taxes under the current rates, and we'll take the lowest income tax rate of 10% and we'll shift it to 15%. 50% increase in the tax rates for those paying in the lowest federal income tax rate. In the middle of the deepest recession in my lifetime. That's backwards. And if we're going to get risk takers to go out and create jobs, then we've got to create an environment where they'll do that, where they'll invest in Kansas, they'll invest in America, and they'll grow jobs here. I think we can all see, I've talked to lots of folks who are in the nonprofit sector in the 18 months I've been running, lots of folks who are around it, who sit on boards and try and help raise money for these organizations. They will almost uniformly tell you that it is really challenging today. It's challenging because their demand is up for their work that they do, and their resources are challenged because businesses who were significant contributors to their organization or individuals who were significant contributors to their organization are not in an economic position to help them go and do the things that they were. And so there's tremendous stress. I think what you see is you see the effects of big federal government. You see the true human cost of big federal government when you see what the challenges are we face right here in the job market and in our nonprofits here in the 4th District of Kansas. I'll take questions.